Hi everyone, this is KnightFighter22 here. I hope you guys are all well, and welcome to the next game of chess in the series. Today we're going to be looking at a very beautiful chess game played by Nakamura, played with the black pieces, and the whole theme of this game really is attacking the king, and there was a queen sacrifice in this game, very beautiful queen sacrifice, which drew the king out and eventually led to a very nice checkmate. Okay, so we'll go ahead and have a look at it. Starts out with an English opening, so Nakamura playing with the black pieces, knight c3, knight f6, this is a rete, it transposes to an English with c4, pretty standard stuff when we see e6, classical defense really, g3, shadowing the bishop, d5, bishop to e7 now, just getting developed, and both sides go ahead and get castled, and now we see b3, so possibly the idea of fianchettoing the bishop and attacking down here towards the king. Also supporting the c4 pawn because Nakamura could just go ahead and take right there. And he plays a5 just to go ahead and sort of counterattack this on the queen side. Knight to c3. And now we see c6. So just getting a foothold on the d5 square. Nakamura being black, he has already controlled one of these central squares, so he wants to keep control of it. And now we see pawn down to d4. So this is the whole theme of the English really, is to really get out your minor pieces and then start attacking these pawn moves later, so your opponent think you may not be aggressive, but really you are being quite aggressive. Also it gives a lot of flexibility to this bishop, this move. It can come out all the way to a3, or it can come out all the way to h6 if someone would want to play chess like that. Okay, so we see knight from b to d7 now. This is again just developing pieces. And now queen c2, so queen c2 possibly lined up towards the kingside attack going on in the future. And now we see b6. Now this is a very clever move because, as you can see, this bishop on c8 isn't very good. It's not a very good minor piece of Nakamura's, definitely not doing its 3 points worth in material because it's stuck on this knight on d7, and even if this knight moved, it would still be stuck by the e6 pawn, which isn't going to move because if a knight moves, then an e5 pawn push would be very, very hard to make. You would have to move the bishop, then play the rook to e8, and then get to the knight on another square when it's supporting e5. So really, it's going to take him 5-6 moves to get this bishop out to a decent square outside the pawn chain. So that's why he's played pawn b6, to utilize the bishop out on these two very powerful squares. Okay, so we see e4 now, just striking in the center, and now we see bishop a6. And this is quite interesting because you don't usually see bishop a6. You usually see a fianchetto because this is the longest diagonal in the board, right? But often you will see bishop a6 or even bishop h6 because these are very useful diagonals as well, and something that not many people might expect. But as bishop b7 is blocked in by the pawns, Nakamura guessed, okay, bishop a6 is good. And there's a pin actually because this pawn is pinned because the rook will be lost if this pawn ever moved. Okay, so we see knight back to d2 now. White is just trying to get a more play on the queen side. This knight wasn't doing very well here, and now supports c4 and e4. c5, so breaking in the center. And now we see some trades. C takes d4, attacking knight. Knight down to b5, purely just blocking out this bishop and trying to win the pawn on e4. So we see e takes f5, winning back some material, and materials equalized again. So knight takes d4. And now we see rook c8, and you'll notice all of a sudden Nakamura has a very nice tactic. He's opened up the c file, and now he's put a lot of pressure on this pawn on c4. It's actually pinned on 2 occasions now. So for example, this bishop is pinning it to the rook, and this rook is pinning it to the queen. So this, if you see from the white perspective, there's a lot of pressure put on this pawn. So now we see rook over to e1. This is putting pressure on this bishop and also pinning this queen in the way because the queen has to stay guarded the bishop, otherwise it will be taken as the queen is the only defender. Okay, so b5. This is a very interesting move, just opening up these pawn chains, taking advantage of these pin. Just bear in mind, you know when the rook moved over to e1, there is no longer a defender on the f2 square, and in a few moves you'll see the square become critical. Also you'll notice by playing the move b5, queen b6 comes available, and then this queen will be able to take control of this diagonal, which is weakened because the rook has no longer got an f1 protecting the pawn on f2. Okay, so we see bishop to b2, as I said, just fianchettoing, longest diagonal on the board, and this also lines up a tactic which we'll see in a few moves, with the bishop attacking the knight. So we see rook e8 just defending the bishop and making sure that the queen can move. And now we see the queen drop back to d1 purely because, you know, c2 might have been a great place for it. Maybe the opponent reconsidered, maybe queen f3, queen g4. Well, queen g4 is attacked by the knight, but whatever, you know, queen e2, queen f3, maybe queen e2, putting pressure on the bishop. And now we see b takes c4. So after this recaptures now, Nakamura can go ahead and play the queen to b6, which was his plan. And now we see rook over to b1. So Nakamura's opponent is also playing very cleverly because this rook is now aligned with the queen, and obviously there can be some tactics which we'll see in just a second. D takes c4, and now we see knight c6, and it looks as though Nakamura has fallen for a trap, because what you'll notice is if queen takes c6 here, then we can have bishop takes knight, and after here takes, then rook takes. So if rook takes, then that's what will happen. Also, if rook takes, queen takes knight here, and the queen's going to be lost because this queen's attacking here, and you can win a piece. So what I'm saying is, let me just go over that again. So knight c6. If rook takes knight, then we have bishop takes f6, and the queen is attacked. So after the queen moves, then bishop can take e7, and white is up a piece. But Nakamura goes ahead and takes the rook, takes the bishop anyway. Takes the knight anyway, and then after bishop takes f6, he now makes use of the f2 square. Now, yeah, you're thinking, is he really going to take on f2? And yes, this is the queen sacrifice I mentioned in the title of the video. So queen takes f2, and it would be pretty silly not to take the queen in this position. So king takes f2, and now we see just a mass of attack. A very beautiful attack. So it all starts off with bishop to c5 check, drawing the king out. So what you'll notice is the king can't go back to g1. So this king is being lured out, and if the king goes back to f1, there's c3 check, which is quite annoying, because this pawn will come out to promotion, and this bishop is checking the king, drawing the king out even further. So that's why the king goes up to f3 in this position, and now we have a simple rook takes f6 check, and you'll notice how this rook has just been utilized to come all the way over to the king side, just like that, with the tempo and collecting up another piece as well. And then we see king up to g4, and now another piece coming in with a tempo, knight e5 check. You just need to take a note, there is a background mate for Nakamura here. So another purpose behind the move knight e5 check is to deflect that and keep attacking on the king. And then we see king down to g5, just defending really, and getting the king on a safe square. Rook g6 check, and now the king goes across to h5. And then we see f6. So the king is in quite a bit of trouble. Not only does f6 support the knight, but Nakamura's real intention is to play rook g5 check and really get some deadly threats. Now the rook pretty much has to take on e5 here, because this rook and knight, they're getting so strong, there is a mate pretty quickly. So we see rook takes e5 as really some form of desperation, and now we see rook takes back on f5, and the king must go across to h4. You know, it's got pretty limited on squares, and now we see bishop to c8, just x-raying this last diagonal and threatening a mate. Now you may be thinking, oh, there's quite a lot of options that white can do to prevent this mate, right? He can deflect it, you know, playing the bishop into d5, all sorts of stuff, because that's a check, right? So yeah, we will see now. The opponent did actually resign here, but I set up all the best moves for white and how Nakamura would contribute them if the game went on. So the best move for white in this position is bishop to d5. These are all pretty much desperate moves, you know, because there's nothing really white can do to prevent the mate. He just has to, you know, play as many dumb moves as possible. So rook takes d5, that's got to be taken because it's check. And now the knight is pinned, so that's out of the question. But now g4. So this bishop d5 move has given white a couple moves extra time to possibly get the king back into the corner. I don't know if it's really going to work though, because we see rook to d3, and this contributes here, so the king can no longer go along here and threatens rook to h6, which will be pretty nasty. So to prevent that, queen to f3 is going to be played. As I said again, just a dumb move, but what you'll notice is after rook takes f3, then the knight can go ahead and take back, so this threat isn't so much deadly. And now we see bishop takes g4, sorry, rook takes g4, and yeah, white's a little bit stuck here. and I believe there's king h3 and there's king h5. If king h5, I believe is g6 check, king h6, and then bishop d3, and then knight blocks g5, and then bishop takes g5 is checkmate. So that's one continuation. And then king h3 is what we saw anyway, but then we can play rook back to g5, check with the bishop, the king's got to go to h4, and then bishop to f2 is checkmate. So what a beautiful checkmate that was. Let's just go ahead and check a look at the other checkmate just to see if I was correct. So rook takes g4, and then I believe king h5 is the only move, and then we can see g6 check, and then the king's got to go to h6, bishop d3 check, knight blocks, and then bishop takes is checkmate also. So I think that was the other continuation. I didn't check that with the computer though, so I'm not entirely sure, but I think that was forced. Okay, so that was a very beautiful checkmate that we just saw by Nakamura. We'll go back to the original position where his opponent resigned. This was at bishop c8. So it's a very beautiful checkmate. I enjoyed going over some of the continuations with you. I wish you good luck playing chess. Please comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye everyone.